Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Coffee with Sales Engineers. I'm not drinking coffee right now. I don't know, Ed, if it's too late for coffee time, but you have your coffee?
I actually recently kicked coffee. It's a huge thing that I've been trying to deal with. I've been 12 weeks now without any coffee. I was a 6 cup of coffee per day person, so this is a big shift.
Is it replaced with tea, though, or just
Y-
cold turkey?
Cold turkey caffeine,
Eh?
herbal tea, but not.
Very excited to have you on this podcast. I know that we bring a lot of kind of unique stories into how people fall into sales engineering, and you have an amazing background coming from IT support operations and deep into technology that you've been able to leverage that background into now leading an NSE organization at Feedonomics. So would love to have you introduce yourself quickly and tell us a little bit about how you fell into sales engineering and what transpired you to go from IT support and technical consulting into a sales engineering career.
Yeah, sure. My name's Ed Duffy. I am the Senior Manager of Solutions Engineering at Feedonomics. I've been here for just over 4 years now. My journey started about 26, 27 years ago. I started working with a managed enterprise web server hosting company and doing a number of roles from their monitoring team and leading support teams there. It started this path of everything that I was doing, going from on-prem oriented to cloud oriented. Eventually, that was phased out because everything was going to a SaaS solution. I started doing consulting around Oracle Hyperion after that, and it was all about helping build out the systems and teaching people how to use the software, telling them what hardware to buy, and then all of that was also going to the cloud. So it was like, here I am, 40-ish, figuring out what do I do with my life. It really was a chance encounter with a family friend of my wife's husband, who was a sales director at a large computing company and was like, you should think about sales engineering. And I looked at him cross-eyed. I'm like, well, I'm not a salesperson. He walked me through the idea of what a sales engineer is. And he's like, you can look somebody in the eye and have a conversation with them, and also are clearly very smart. So that's what I'm looking for when I need a sales engineer. So I was like, okay, let me investigate this. Found a few people that had gone this path. It's like some former colleagues who had actually gone this path, interviewed with them to get a feel for what their journey was like, and decided to take the leap into this and find the right positions. When an opportunity came up, it was another chance encounter. 2 moments of serendipity led me here. A good friend of mine was a VP of engineering at one of this company's largest clients, and gave my name to the founders, and I got a call. I was like, so what do you want to do? I'm like, well, let's talk about sales engineering. That's where it went from. At this company, we had one sales engineer that had started here before I did. He had come over from our operations team. The idea was that as a company, we realized that our CTO cannot be on all of these technical calls with customers. Like,
Right.
we're growing. We need people who can actually handle that role without actually being in that sort of like high technical leadership role. So I joined as SE number 2 and quickly found my footing here. I was very much so like things that I'm passionate about in my personal life: puzzle solving, storytelling. I was really into this idea of the moth and like personal storytelling. So I started taking storytelling classes, got a couple of opportunities to actually get on stage at the moth. It was a fun experience for me, but it's that idea of just like, how do you build a story around what it is you're trying to convey, whether it's an emotion, a sentiment, a solution. Like, how do you build that narrative? And so that all played into this idea of why sales engineering was such a good fit for me.
How grateful and blessed you are that you had these two individuals that really shaped your career that you're enjoying. I wish I had more people like that told me 5 years before I got into sales engineering, because once I was in it, I was like, this is me.
Yeah.
I should have been doing this the while back. Did you have that feeling? Like, so once you were the second SE, what were some of the things that were the ahas for you that now that you were actually in the sales engineering role, what just clicked and said, this, I'm really good at this?
I think you get those first couple of deals you were heavily involved in, and those are big wins. There was one deal in particular that was easily the most complicated, largest deal that we had worked on that I was a huge part of. Our sales cycle is usually a couple of months, and this one was like a 6-month. I think there was 100 touch points that I had with this deal. It was massive. When that closed, I felt such a feeling of, look at all the revenue that I helped bring to the company. That was where I started feeling real satisfaction from the job. I think it is a moment where, not to be arrogant, but I'm a bright guy, but I'm also not somebody like I get bored very easily in terms of you don't put me in a room to code, right? I used to program an ETL tool with Python. I could figure out what I needed, the pieces and bits of it, but I get very bored if that's my focus. I also get really bored if I'm in a scenario where the clients that I'm working with are the same ones like for years. I've worked in a former role and you just get complacent. With this, I'm constantly talking to new people, constantly solving new challenges. I'm a very outgoing person, so I love that aspect of being able to just be like talking with folks and solving problems for them. But freshness of new faces, new problems, like it forces me to be sharp. It forces me to stay on my feet. I love that about it. There's a little bit of chaos that becomes exciting. And then beyond that, the ability to have helped grow the team the way that I have, like I was SE number 2. The first SE left us about a year after I started. And I had the opportunity to take this team from scratch to now we're up to an 8-member team that I'm now have the absolute honor of leading. It's just such a fulfilling experience. I could not be happier than I am right now. I discovered this when I was about 40. Where would I be if I discovered this when I was 30? It just set such a new fire in me about like
Yeah.
work is no longer something that I do. It's something that I enjoy, that I look forward to every day.
That's amazing. And that's why we're doing this podcast, because hopefully, again, I'll come back to culture. I think you answered this question that I was about to ask you. Obviously, there are many people, many smart people like you that have had amazing career in IT support, technical consulting, customer support, and it's fulfilling for them. But there was something missing for you. At 40, you were looking back and saying, I'm doing good at this. You were obviously getting promoted, but something was missing. And I think you answered that. There was the freshness, there was the managed chaos, and
Yeah.
always be solving problem. And also more importantly, being able to see that immediate result that's revenue driven. So you figured out this was your calling and you've had such an amazing experience growing the team. Tell me about what's important to you as you're hiring new SEs, onboarding, recruiting, and as you've been growing this team. What's been important? What's been challenging? Give us some insights into that experience so far.
I think it's interesting because there's a default knee-jerk reaction to be like the best people that are going to come into this are people who already understand our platform inside and out and know what it takes to implement these solutions. And it is true. A lot of our best members of the team are internal hires. But when I'm actually looking at a candidate, I'm not really just looking at in terms of what they know. I'm looking at like how quickly can they learn something, right? That's something that I think is important, especially in our company. A lot of the problems we have to solve are not even really problems that we have to understand in terms of how our platform works. We have to understand like how this is going to be, like what sort of challenges this is going to happen on downstream systems, or maybe within the client's internal systems that we don't have access to today. We have to figure that out somehow without the ability to like, my learning style is like break things. Like I'm very much so give me a system, let me just like muck about with it till I break it, then I understand the limits of the system. But when I don't have that, how quickly can I find the information that I need to? So that's something that I look for, is like just that ability of like, how quickly can you find the information you need, but also how deep do you think through things? So I will deliberately ask very simplified questions in my interview process. Like I will ask somebody what the difference between FTP and SFTP is, which is so fundamental and rudimentary
Right.
that it seems basic. Some people will just be like, oh, it's a more secure version of FTP. Some people will start getting into SSH protocols or ports and things like that and talking about why it's more secure. Those are the types of people that I'm looking for, thinking things through. I always say I need to understand something at least another layer deep than I have to present on it, knowing that they're thinking about the next level. That's what I'm looking for, those sorts of candidates.
Yeah. And if I was interviewing you, Ed, your comments about puzzle solving and storytelling would have sold it. Because if you're really good at those things, that's bringing that expertise that you were just talking about. It's not about how much you know about your platform. That's important, but you're trying to understand from the prospect what they're actually trying to do. If you can't understand what their requirements are, where they're coming from, it's really hard for you to come up with a solution.
I like to see what makes them tick outside of just work, right?
Yeah.
Like I want somebody who is engaged in, they're engaged in like social activities, even if it's a hobby. I used to DJ in my free time, things that show they're out engaging and being comfortable in uncomfortable situations with strangers. That's also a big thing because I think that helps us strike up a conversation with somebody that might have an intimidating title.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a CTO of some like Fortune 500 company, and you're like you got to come at them and be like, you're ready to say, you know what? I'm the expert here. I know what I'm talking about, and have them believe that without actually being like directly listen to me because I'm the expert, right? That would be the other thing that I tend to look for because it's that complete individual kind of helps inform that, I think.
Through those questions, you're trying to get their level of intellectual curiosity. Before
Sure.
joining Feedonomics, I don't think for the last 20 years you were specializing in omni-channel, but very
Now,
quickly you came into the role and you became a thought leader.
oh, yeah. When I was doing my work with web server hosting, there were some companies that I dealt with then that I'm dealing with now, but it was a very different perspective. I was not dealing with the e-commerce aspect of it. It was a new role, a new space. It was a lot that I had to learn. I was thirsty. When I came in, the training department was like, here's the course that you have for the next couple of weeks. By the end of week one, I was like, I'm done. What's next? Like, give me more. And that thirst for knowledge is something that really helps accelerate this role, especially if you're transitioning not just to a sales engineer, but to a sales engineer in a completely new space. You've got to have that thirst for knowledge.
And I think that knowledge and that curiosity is often in a positive way reflected in front of prospects because that same thrust that you brought in learning about your company, you bring on the first meeting when you're doing a discovery with a prospect, right? And being authentic about you just want to know, you want to
Yeah.
learn about their business because the more you can understand them, the better you can solve for them.
Absolutely. I think that's a very valid point. Making that sort of a shift, you do get a healthy dose of imposter syndrome from time to time, but that also just helps thrive that, oh, wait, maybe I feel like, do I really know what I'm talking about? Now I just need to go learn more. Let me just go reinforce what I believe I know. I think that's all important.
How do you continue to develop the culture? And what about the SC culture is important to you? Of course, we talk about all of us need to be smart, confident, be persuasive in front of an audience because, in addition to the sales rep, people buy from people. So we are that technical aspect when prospects are asking questions and objections. So you got to be smart, you got to know your product. What are some other elements that are important to you in an SC team culture?
I think a couple of things. So, one, our company, we lean on the legacy principles that are based off of the All Blacks New Zealand rugby team. And there are a couple of items in there that we focus on within my team. The number one is an item called that's play with purpose, and the idea of always asking the why. Part of the why that's important is we are always striving for perfection. How do we get better? How do we improve? You grow an SC team first off that starts with just two people to eight. There's a lot of chaos that's going there. It's like, how do you start figuring out, okay, have we been doing this just because we're trying to deal with all of this volume with such a small team, or do we need to reevaluate that? And so knowing that everybody on my team, I believe, obviously my team members, they trust that they feel this way, but that they all know that if they do have something where they're like, maybe we could tweak it this way, I would listen to them, not just in terms of the internal idea of the team, but when you think about the fact that SEs sit in this perfect nexus between product, operation, sales, and our clients, we have a powerful voice. There's a responsibility that comes with it, but a powerful voice to say, this is what our prospects are actually looking for that maybe we're not doing today. Or these are things that our operations team is saying that like some of these deals we've been bringing across, they're struggling because of these items. So we need to start looking at how do we avoid that, or how do we prepare a client to better onboard in the future, right? Things along those lines where there's that level of having that like sitting between all of those pieces, I think gives us this great overview of what it is that we're offering as a company and where potentially we can make solid suggestions for improvement. The other thing is I really push for a collaborative environment with my team. This idea that even though one SE is assigned to a deal, it's a collaboration across the team. So there are SEs on my team who we deal with clients that are listing on marketplaces and clients that are looking to list their products into an e-commerce platform. There's different requirements around here, and one maybe have all the details about marketplaces, and one may have all the details about like advertising feeds, things like that. Making sure that they really feel comfortable working with each other reaching out to each other, just running one-on-ones with each other to help make sure that there's this knowledge transfer that's happening and they're supporting each other. I think it makes for a good team feeling too. So even if one of the team members had 15 more deals than everybody else close, the entire team feels like they have a piece of that.
Yeah. It can be dangerous, right? Because you are represented in front of prospect as this person is the technical person, right? They know they have all the answers. So it's a slippery slope because you can fall into that mindset of if I'm being asked that question, I should come up with an answer versus what you're describing is that you don't have to know everything, but collaborate, right? Look for experts that may know more than you and collaborate with others to bring that knowledge to the prospects.
And this even ties back to when we were talking about like good interview questions or what I look for in an interview, because what I actually would prefer is I don't want somebody that if they're not 100% sure about the answer tries to BS me on it.
An answer.
Yeah, the right answer in many cases is, you know what, that's a really good question. Let me get back to you on that. Convey that in a way that's not saying you can't answer every question that way or the confidence is completely undermined, but approaching it in that way of understanding that you're not going to know everything all the time and that you are comfortable to reach out for the info you need. I think that's a key piece of what makes an SE successful.
Yeah. Amazing. I think both of those items creates empowerment, right? Because SEs and your team, I often talk about it's very easy in many companies to be a demo monkey because that's the core activity. Nobody feels empowered by being the demo monkey. The culture that you've created where the nexus that you were talking about, think about the impact and influence each individual has on where the product is heading, what are we communicating to customers, how are we not just bringing in revenue, but we're also accountable for bringing customers that are going to be customers for life, right?
Yeah.
You don't get that level of influence and impact in many roles across the company. I want to go back to listeners that are not 40 yet, or maybe they are 40. They haven't felt that moment, right, in their career of, I got to do something different, but maybe there's an itch there, right? What would you say to them? So I'm in IT support, I'm in technical consulting. What are some things I can be looking for either in my personality or in my work that should be a signal for them that they should consider sales engineering? And then what should they do about that? Should they reach out to you? Should they look for other sales engineers in their network and go talk to them about understand the role a little bit more?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think there's, a few things that could trigger that. If you are somebody who really enjoys the social aspect of it, today it's a little bit different than it was when I started working in tech in the 90s. But even still today, you used to get the idea of tech folks who are just hiding in dark rooms, not coming out for light, not talking to anybody. And sure, I had my goth days too, but I think it was a little bit more antisocial than that. That was the stereotype. If you are somebody that people respond to and say you're really good at conveying technical concepts to people who are not that technical, then wait a minute, this might be a path forward to you because it's a it is still today a rarefied skill set. And I think when you have that, it's super valuable because everybody needs a communicator who can actually sell the value of what it is and how it's going to work to a prospect. So I think that's number one. If you've got that and you've got a social vibe to you, I guess you could say. You like telling stories, you like solving new problems, because a lot of times we end up in jobs in IT where we're just solving the same problems or different variations of the problems. But if you like finding a new challenge all the time, I think that's something that would be a good indicator. If you've worked with people in the past who have gone down this path, or just go on LinkedIn, find people who have sales engineer, solutions engineer title. I think a commonality between at least everyone I've known in this role is that we love to talk to people. We love to share our journey with people. So like cold reach out to somebody, just be like, hey, what was this like for you? What do you think about these aspects of what I've been doing and how that would translate? Maybe not everybody will respond, but I did that when I was looking through it. Like some people I knew, but there were other people I didn't, that I just reached out and was like, I want to talk to you about your journey. And they were more than happy to talk to me, give me resources. It's amazing how this position lends itself to people who really want to collaborate. I love being around people who are more successful than me, not because I'm trying to ride on their coattails, but I like celebrating that.
That's a great recommendation. Thank you for sharing your journey. Thank you for sharing your ideas on how you recruit, because I think a lot of this podcast attracts a lot of people that are on the edge. They want to get into it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.